Ronan stood on the edge of the battlefield, his boots sinking slightly into the scorched soil. Smoke rose in thin gray ribbons from the ruins that once were cities, towers, and homes. Silence lay over the land like a heavy blanket. The war had ended, but the cost was written everywhere. He could feel it in his chest, in the tightness of his shoulders, and in the hollow ache of memories he could not erase. He glanced at the horizon. The sky was pale, tinged with orange from fires that still burned in scattered pockets. The alien race they had fought for years, the Zarathians, had finally agreed to surrender, but surrender never felt simple. War left more than broken walls. It left broken people. Ronan's hand rested on the hilt of his sword, a gesture born more of habit than need. Weapons had become part of him, an extension of his body after years of battle. Around him, his comrades moved quietly, their faces tired and haunted. Some had been friends for years. Some were gone. A distant hum drew his attention. He turned to see a small group of Zarathians approaching from the remnants of their city. Their forms were tall and elegant, their skin pale with hints of silver that caught the sunlight. Leading them was a young woman, her presence commanding yet serene. She walked with a grace that seemed almost unnatural, yet it was not threatening. Her silver eyes held a quiet strength, the kind of strength that could hold an empire together. "Ronan," one of the human commanders said, breaking the silence. "They brought someone." "They say it is a gift." Ronan raised his eyebrows. "A gift." After years of fighting, he had grown wary of gifts. They were often traps or gestures of surrender that masked ulterior motives. He took a cautious step forward as the group approached. The young alien bowed slightly. "I am Princess Arya," she said in perfect common, the language humans and Zarathians had learned to communicate in over the years. Her voice was calm and clear, carrying a tone that made him listen carefully. "I come with a gesture of peace. I wish to help your people and show that my race means no harm." Ronan studied her carefully. Her posture was straight, but there was no arrogance in her movements. Her eyes, bright and silver, met his directly. There was intelligence there, curiosity, and something else he could not name. He felt a tug of caution and respect at the same time. The commander stepped forward. "Ronan, you will escort her to the human command center. She is to be protected until the council decides what to do. No harm is to come to her." Ronan nodded. It was not his favorite duty, but he had long learned that orders were not suggestions. Still, as he looked at Arya, he felt a stirring of something unfamiliar. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps it was the first flicker of hope he had felt in years. As they moved toward the human base, Ronan kept a careful eye on the surroundings. The land was littered with wreckage, vehicles, shattered buildings, and remnants of alien war machines. Occasionally, a Zarathian soldier would glance at him warily, unsure if he would strike. Ronan did not. He moved steadily, alert but not aggressive. Arya walked beside him, her gaze sweeping over the ruins. "It is hard to imagine your world after such a war," she said quietly. "I have seen many things, but the damage here is great. Yet I sense determination among your people. You have survived much." Ronan's lips pressed into a thin line. "Survival comes at a cost," he replied. "We survive because we must. But the cost, it never leaves you." Arya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand. My people have felt similar loss. War does not leave the heart easily. That is why I wish to help. I do not want your people to suffer more than necessary." Her sincerity was unexpected. Ronan had learned to distrust most words from the enemy, but there was a quiet honesty in her voice. Something in him began to shift, a subtle change that made him more open to listening. As they walked, the landscape changed. They crossed a river blackened with smoke and ash. Trees were twisted and broken, and small fires flickered among the debris. The air smelled of iron and burned metal, a scent that would linger in Ronan's memory for years. Arya paused at one point and bent down to touch the charred earth. "This land can be healed," she said softly. "It will take time, but it can grow again." Ronan watched her, uncertain. Could anyone truly heal what had been done? He wanted to believe it, but the soldier in him had seen too many dreams shattered. Still, there was something about her presence that made the thought feel less impossible. They reached the outskirts of the human command center by mid-afternoon. Guards approached, weapons ready, but Ronan stepped forward to signal them. "She is under my protection," he said. "Do not harm her." The guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons, recognizing his authority. Arya gave a small nod of thanks. her posture still calm and regal despite the tension around them. Inside the command center, human leaders gathered in a large hall. Many faces were grim. They had heard of the surrender and the peace offering, but skepticism lingered like a shadow over the room. Ronan led Arya into the hall. She bowed slightly to the council. "I am here to help your people. I wish for peace and cooperation between our races," she said, her voice carrying a quiet power that made even the skeptics pause. A council member, a stern woman named Mara, narrowed her eyes. "We have heard many promises before. Why should we trust you now?" Arya met Mara's gaze steadily. "Because I do not ask for trust blindly. I offer actions. My people and I have knowledge that can help rebuild what was lost. I seek not domination, but partnership." The room was silent for a moment. Ronan felt the weight of the moment. He had seen countless leaders try to negotiate peace and fail, but Arya was not like anyone he had known. Her words were measured and her intent seemed genuine. Ronan stepped forward. "I have escorted her here. She has shown no sign of deception or hostility. I recommend she be allowed to demonstrate her intentions. She is not our enemy anymore," the council murmured, some nodding reluctantly, others still skeptical. Finally, Mara spoke. "Very well. She will be given the opportunity, but any sign of betrayal and she will be detained immediately." Arya inclined her head. "I understand. I ask only for the chance to show goodwill." After the council meeting, Ronan escorted Arya to a small living quarter within the command center. It was simple but comfortable. Arya examined the room carefully, noting the design and arrangement of human technology. "You have rebuilt quickly after the war," she said quietly. "Your people are strong, resilient, and determined." "It is admirable," Ronan shrugged. "We survive because we must. Strength is a tool, but it does not erase the cost of what we lost." Arya looked out the window at the ruined city below. "Perhaps together we can make something new from the loss. Something better." Ronan felt a strange warmth at her words. For the first time in many years, he allowed himself to hope. Hope was a dangerous feeling for a soldier, but with Arya it felt different. It was not naive or fleeting. It was steady and purposeful. That evening, as the sun set behind the shattered skyline, Ronan stood on the balcony of the command center watching the fading light. Arya joined him quietly, her presence calming. Neither spoke for a long time. Words were unnecessary. The silence carried a shared understanding. Ronan knew the road ahead would not be easy. Trust between humans and Zarathians would take years to build. Old wounds would not heal quickly, but with Arya there was a chance. A chance to turn the end of war into the beginning of something new. As night fell and stars appeared in the dark sky, Ronan felt a sense of responsibility heavier than any battlefield he had faced. Protecting Arya was not just about keeping her safe. It was about protecting the fragile hope she represented. And perhaps in time, that hope would change history. Ronan turned to look at Arya. She was quiet, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. In that moment he understood that the gift humanity had received was not only the princess herself, but the possibility of a future where humans and Zarathians could stand together. A future that could be brighter than anything the war had destroyed. Ronan straightened his shoulders and made a silent promise to himself. He would protect her. He would see this new path through no matter the cost. Because sometimes the greatest battles were not fought with swords or weapons, but with trust, courage, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. And so, the first chapter of a new era began. The war was over, but the real journey, the journey of peace, understanding, and history yet to be written, was only beginning. Ronan led Princess Arya out of the human command center the next morning. Their destination was a safe city across the plains, where humans and Zarathians could begin rebuilding together. The path was long and dangerous. Pockets of rogue alien forces still resisted the peace. Some were loyal to the old warlords, unwilling to accept the end of conflict. Ronan's instincts were sharp, and he knew they could be attacked at any moment. Arya walked beside him with quiet composure. Her silver eyes scanned the horizon, and she occasionally touched the controls on her small device, which could detect threats and map the terrain. Ronan was impressed by her skills. She had not been raised as a soldier, yet she understood strategy and caution better than many trained humans he had seen. "Your people fight with courage," she said quietly. "But courage alone does not guarantee survival. I can help you anticipate threats before they reach you. Ronan glanced at her. You've seen war, haven't you? Arya nodded. I have. Not in the same way as you, but I have lost friends and advisors. I have seen cities burned and families torn apart. That is why I wish to prevent more loss. Humans have a chance to rebuild. We can guide that chance. Ronan kept his eyes on the horizon. He had heard these words before, often from enemies. Yet Arya's tone was different. There was no pride, no desire to dominate. There was simply a wish to help. It stirred something in him he had not felt in years. Trust. Hours passed as they moved through the plains. The wind carried the smell of charred earth and fresh grass struggling to grow in patches untouched by fire. Occasionally, animals appeared, small creatures that had survived the war despite everything. Arya paused to observe them, her hand outstretched as if she wished to understand their small lives. Ronan watched her quietly. Most people in his position would have dismissed such curiosity as naive, but Arya's interest was gentle and intelligent. It reminded him that life could continue even after devastation. As the sun climbed higher, a distant rumble reached them. Ronan raised a hand, signaling for caution. Shadows moved among the hills. A group of rogue Zarathians, armed and angry, appeared at the crest of a hill. Rogue patrol, Ronan said, his voice low. They do not accept the peace. Arya stepped forward. Let me help, she said calmly. She raised her device, and a soft light glowed from it, scanning the terrain and mapping the positions of the rogue soldiers. They are well armed, but their formation is weak. If we approach carefully, we can avoid a direct fight. Ronan nodded, impressed. He had trained for years in combat. Yet Arya's approach was precise and clever. They moved slowly, keeping low to the ground, using the small hills and rocks for cover. Arya whispered instructions, guiding Ronan around the most dangerous areas. Even with her guidance, a stray shot rang out. Ronan pushed Arya down behind a rock, just as a laser bolt hit the ground where she had stood moments before. His heart pounded, but she looked at him with calm eyes. We must continue, she said. Do not let fear slow us. The rogue soldiers fired again, but this time Arya used her device to create a brief blinding pulse, confusing their sensors and giving them a chance to move. Ronan fought back with precision, disabling a small unit of attackers while keeping Arya safe. Together, their movements were synchronized, human strength and alien intelligence working as one. When the last of the rogue soldiers fled, Ronan exhaled, finally allowing himself to feel relief. You are better at this than most soldiers I know, he said. Arya smiled faintly. I am not a soldier, but I have studied strategy. War is not only about strength. It is about observation, patience, and understanding your opponent. You have courage, and I can guide it. They continued their journey, now more cautious but confident that together they could face dangers. As evening approached, they set up camp near a small river, its waters clear despite the devastation around it. Arya knelt and dipped her hands into the water, studying it carefully. Your world is healing, she said softly. Life finds a way, even in places that seem destroyed. Humans and Zarathians must be the same. We can heal too if we choose to. Ronan sat across from her, sharpening his blade. Healing is not easy, he said. People hold on to anger. Hatred lasts longer than we expect. Arya nodded. I know. That is why trust is the most important step. Trust is not given freely. It is earned. We must show that we are worthy of it through our actions. Night fell, and the stars appeared above the ruins of the world they had known. Arya and Ronan shared a small meal, eating quietly but comfortably. In silence, they began to understand one another, not just as human and alien, but as companions on a shared mission. The next morning, their path led into a dense forest. The trees were scarred from the war, but life thrived in small bursts. Birds chirped cautiously, and small animals darted through the underbrush. Arya moved with grace, noting every sound and movement. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the trees. A large branch fell near them, and they froze. From the shadows, a pack of wild creatures emerged, mutated by the war but still living. Ronan raised his sword, ready to defend them. Wait, Arya said. They are frightened, not hostile. Move slowly, do not threaten them. Ronan hesitated, then followed her instructions. Slowly, they backed away. The creatures studied them with cautious eyes, then retreated into the forest. Ronan exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. You are amazing, he said. I would have charged without thinking. Arya shook her head. Strength without thought is dangerous. You know that better than anyone. By mid-afternoon, they reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a wide valley. In the distance, smoke rose from small settlements, but the valley itself seemed calm. Arya pointed to a cluster of buildings. That city is where we are going. Humans and Zarathians are already working together there. It will be safer. Ronan nodded. Good. We both need rest after today. As they descended into the valley, Arya shared stories of her people, their customs, and their ways of thinking. Ronan listened carefully, realizing that she was more than a princess. She was a teacher, a guide, and a friend. Through her words, he began to understand the alien perspective and the reasons behind their actions in the war. At sunset, they arrived at the city. Humans and Zarathians worked side by side, rebuilding homes, clearing debris, and sharing resources. The sight was hopeful. For the first time in years, Ronan felt a glimmer of optimism. Arya smiled as she observed the scene. This is what we can achieve together. Humans and Zarathians, united not by fear but by purpose. Ronan nodded, his thoughts heavy with responsibility. It is a good beginning. But many will not accept peace easily. We will face challenges both outside and within ourselves. Arya placed a hand on his arm, a simple gesture of reassurance. Then we will face them together. You have strength, courage, and determination. I have knowledge, strategy, and hope. Together, we can make a difference. That night, as the city quieted, Ronan and Arya watched the stars from a hill. Fires burned below, casting a warm glow over the rebuilding city. The world was far from healed, but the journey of trust had begun. Ronan thought about the battles he had fought, the lives lost, and the lands destroyed. But next to him, Arya represented something new, a chance for humans to rise from the ashes, not just as survivors, but as creators of a better future. In that moment, Ronan made a silent promise. He would protect Arya, guide her, and work with her to create a world where trust and courage were stronger than fear and hatred. The war was over, but the journey of peace was only beginning. And for the first time in many years, Ronan allowed himself to believe that the impossible could be possible. The city spread out before Ronan and Arya as they approached its gates. It was alive with movement and hope, a stark contrast to the ruined lands they had traveled through. Humans and Zarathians worked together seamlessly, lifting heavy debris, clearing roads, and rebuilding homes. Children of both species played in the open fields, laughter echoing above the hum of construction. The sight warmed Ronan's heart. This is impressive, he said quietly. I did not expect to see this much progress already. Arya's silver eyes gleamed with pride. Change takes time, but even small steps matter. Look at these people. They are not just survivors, they are builders, creators, and dreamers. That is humanity's greatest strength. Ronan nodded. You have a way of seeing the good in people, even when it is hard to find. Arya smiled faintly. I do not ignore the bad. I simply choose to focus on what can grow from it. Inside the city, the Human Council had arranged a meeting to discuss the integration of Zarathians into the community. Many humans were still cautious. The wounds of war ran deep and trust had to be earned, not demanded. Ronan, bring her in, Mara said when they arrived. Her face was stern, her posture rigid. This council will decide how much freedom she is allowed. Arya stepped forward and bowed slightly. I am here to offer cooperation. I will share knowledge and skills to help your people recover. A council member, an older man named Loran, raised an eyebrow. Knowledge is not enough. How do we know you are not here to manipulate us? Arya looked at him steadily. Because manipulation will harm both our peoples. I have no interest in dominance. I am here to help, and I am willing to prove it through action. Ronan watched silently. Her words carried weight, but he knew that in politics, words alone were never enough. Actions spoke louder, and the council would need to see results. The meeting ended with a cautious agreement. Arya was allowed to demonstrate her abilities in several projects that combined human and Zarathian expertise. She would work alongside engineers, scientists, and laborers to improve technology, energy systems, and city infrastructure. The next days were filled with activity. Arya introduced new techniques to purify water faster and repair damaged buildings more efficiently. She showed humans how to use certain alien tools to accelerate construction. Many workers were skeptical. At first, but they quickly realized her methods were effective. Ronan walked beside her as she guided teams of humans and Zarathians. "You are making friends faster than I thought possible," he said. Arya laughed softly. "Friendship is earned by effort and respect, not by words. I am showing them that I can help without demanding trust. That is the first step." As the days passed, Arya's presence began to change the city. Humans who had once been suspicious started to work willingly with Zarathians. Children of both species began to learn from one another. The air seemed lighter, as if the shadow of the war had begun to lift. Yet not everyone was happy. A faction of humans, still fearful and resentful, whispered that Arya could not be trusted. They believed she would betray them once the city was rebuilt. Ronan noticed their tension during his rounds, and he understood that trust was fragile and needed constant reinforcement. One afternoon, a challenge arose. A shipment of essential supplies was attacked by a group of rogue aliens. The city's defenses were caught off guard, and panic spread quickly among the workers. Ronan drew his sword immediately, ready to defend the people. Arya activated her device, projecting a field that slowed the attackers' movements and made it difficult for them to aim accurately. Together, they coordinated the defense, guiding humans and Zarathians to safety and neutralizing the threat without unnecessary casualties. After the skirmish, the council convened again. Arya presented the data she had collected from the attack, showing how the defense could be strengthened to prevent future incidents. Loran, the older council member, studied her carefully. "You acted decisively," he said, "and without loss of life. That is commendable." Arya bowed slightly. "We must protect every life. War has already taken too many." Ronan felt a surge of pride. Her actions were proving that peace and cooperation could work. Humans could. See, that courage, combined with intelligence and compassion, created a force stronger than any army. The council granted Arya permission to expand her projects. She began organizing joint teams to rebuild the city faster, sharing leadership roles between humans and Zarathians. Each project became an opportunity to show trust in action. One morning, as they oversaw the construction of a water purification plant, Arya spoke quietly to Ronan. "Your people have endured so much. Yet despite all the pain, you continue to hope. That is remarkable." Ronan looked at her. "Hope is what keeps us going. Without it, we are lost. You give people a reason to hope, Arya." Arya smiled. "And you give me the chance to act on that hope. Together, we can do more than rebuild buildings. We can rebuild hearts and minds." Word of their successes spread beyond the city. Neighboring towns began sending representatives to learn from their efforts. Humans and Zarathians who had been isolated by fear and suspicion started to cooperate. The city became a symbol of what was possible when both races worked together. Despite the progress, not all challenges were external. Some humans resisted integration, fearing that Zarathians would dominate decision-making or change their way of life. Others doubted Arya's intentions. Ronan often found himself mediating disputes, using both his authority and his growing trust in Arya to calm tensions. Arya remained patient and composed. She listened to concerns without judgment and offered solutions that balanced the needs of both species. Slowly, hearts softened. Small gestures of goodwill, sharing meals, teaching skills, celebrating customs, began to build bridges where suspicion had stood. One evening, a young human girl approached Arya, holding a small bundle of flowers. "Thank you for helping us," she said shyly. "I like seeing humans and Zarathians work together. It feels right." Arya knelt to the child's level, taking the flowers gently. "You are welcome," she said. "Remember, the future is in your hands. You can choose friendship and understanding, and it will grow stronger with every choice." Ronan watched from nearby, feeling a warmth he had not felt in years. These small acts, these moments of connection, were the true victories. Buildings could be rebuilt, but hearts and trust required time and care. As night fell, the city glowed softly under lanterns and firelight. Humans and Zarathians moved among each other, working, talking, and sharing meals. The sound of cooperation and laughter replaced the silence of war. Ronan and Arya stood on a small hill overlooking the city. The view was peaceful, almost serene. The journey had been difficult, but progress was visible. "Do you ever wonder if peace can last?" Ronan asked quietly. Arya turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the light of the fires below. "Peace is never guaranteed, but if we continue to act with courage, wisdom, and trust, it can endure. That is the choice we make every day." Ronan nodded. He understood that the road ahead would still be full of obstacles, but he felt stronger knowing Arya was beside him. Together, they could face the challenges of rebuilding not only cities but the bonds between species. In that moment, he realized that the war had not truly ended with the surrender of armies. The real battle was now, convincing hearts to trust, again, teaching people that cooperation could be stronger than fear. And with Arya's guidance, he believed they could succeed. The city was no longer just a place to survive. It was a place to live, to learn, and to grow. Ronan understood that history could change if humans and Zarathians chose to work together. And in that possibility, he found hope for the first time in many years. As they walked back toward the city, ready to continue their work, Ronan felt a sense of determination he had never known before. The future was uncertain, but he no longer feared it. With Arya, he could help create a world where courage, trust, and cooperation defined the human story. And so, the foundation of a new alliance was laid, not through treaties alone, but through action, understanding, and the willingness to see the good in one another. Humanity's courage, combined with alien wisdom, was beginning to change history. The city had grown stronger under the careful guidance of Arya and Ronan. Streets once ruined by war were now lined with buildings repaired using both human and Zarathian technology. Gardens bloomed where ash had once lain. Children ran freely, laughing as they learned from each other. The city was alive, and hope spread like sunlight through the streets. Ronan walked alongside Arya, observing the progress. His eyes tracked the workers, both human and Zarathian, as they coordinated seamlessly. "It is incredible to see how far we have come," he said. "Even I did not imagine the city could look like this so quickly." Arya smiled softly. "It is not only the work of humans or Zarathians. It is the work of cooperation. When people see a common goal, they can achieve more than they imagine." Their attention shifted when a messenger arrived, running through the streets with a message for the council. Ronan and Arya followed him to the council hall where they learned of a disaster. A nearby settlement, home to both humans and Zarathians, had been struck by a massive storm. Buildings collapsed and many people were trapped or injured. Ronan's jaw tightened. "We must act immediately," he said. He turned to Arya. "You and I will lead a rescue team. The city's workers will follow your guidance." Arya nodded. "We can save many lives if we act carefully and quickly. We must remain calm, even in the chaos." The journey to the settlement was tense. Trees had fallen across roads and rivers had flooded, making passage difficult. Yet Ronan and Arya worked together, combining human endurance and strength with Arya's advanced alien devices that could detect survivors and stabilize structures. Upon arrival, the scene was grim. Buildings were toppled, roofs torn off, and smoke rose from small fires caused by damaged heating systems. People called for help, their voices echoing through the wreckage. "Focus on the children first," Arya instructed. She moved among the ruins, scanning collapsed walls with her device. Small beams of light revealed where survivors were trapped. Ronan lifted heavy debris with other human rescuers, creating pathways for those in need. Hours passed in a blur of action. Ronan carried children from the rubble, while Arya directed teams to stabilize damaged structures. Her knowledge of alien engineering allowed them to erect temporary supports quickly, preventing further collapses. A mother clutched her baby, crying. Ronan handed the child to Arya, who cradled it gently while helping the mother to safety. The sight struck a chord in him. Every life they saved reminded him why the work mattered. It was not glory, not recognition. It was humanity in action. When the last survivors were rescued, Ronan and Arya stood together surveying the settlement. Many homes were destroyed, but no lives had been lost in the final hours of the storm. Relief and gratitude shone in the eyes of the survivors. Arya turned to Ronan. See how courage and careful planning can change outcomes? We cannot prevent disasters entirely, but we can lessen their impact. Ronan nodded, feeling a swell of pride. He realized that her presence was changing more than the city. It was changing him. He had spent years fighting and surviving. Now he was leading, protecting, and building. And beside him was someone who inspired not fear or caution, but action and hope. The council convened again the next day. Leaders from neighboring cities had arrived to witness the results of Arya's methods. The success of the rescue operation impressed even the skeptics. This young princess has shown skill, leadership, and compassion, Loran said during the council meeting. Her actions have saved lives and strengthened our people's trust in this new alliance. Mara, still cautious, added, her methods are effective, but we must remain vigilant. Trust must be earned every day. Arya inclined her head respectfully. I understand. My purpose is not to seek admiration, but to help. Trust grows through actions, not words. That is why we work together. Ronan spoke as well. She has proven herself in the field. I stand by her. Together we can lead both humans and Zarathians to a future worth building. After the council meeting, Arya and Ronan worked to strengthen the city's infrastructure. New buildings rose faster, using techniques that combined human craftsmanship and Zarathian efficiency. Water systems were improved, roads cleared and strengthened, and energy grids stabilized. Each success inspired more cooperation between the two species. Yet the challenges continued. Some humans still feared alien influence, and some Zarathians resisted close cooperation. Ronan and Arya traveled between communities, mediating disputes and encouraging collaboration. Their example of courage, patience, and fairness began to sway opinions. One evening, a delegation of Zarathian elders approached Arya. They had observed the progress and the cooperation between species. Their voices, though cautious, were full of respect. You honor your title and your people, one elder said. Humans are beginning to see us as partners, not enemies. That is a gift greater than any we could give. Arya smiled. It is not only my work. Humans like Ronan have shown the courage and wisdom to accept change. Together we make the future possible. Ronan, standing beside her, felt a quiet pride. He had never imagined leading in a world of peace, yet here he was, helping guide two species toward harmony. His experiences in battle had prepared him for strategy, but nothing had prepared him for this, the challenge of rebuilding trust and creating a shared future. As they walked through the city later that night, Arya paused at a small plaza where children played. The laughter was light, unburdened by fear or suspicion. She turned to Ronan. Do you see what we are doing here? It is more than rebuilding buildings. We are rebuilding hearts, minds, and hope. Ronan nodded. I see it, and it is worth every risk we have taken. In the following weeks, Ronan and Arya expanded their efforts. They trained joint teams of humans and Zarathians to respond to emergencies, repair technology, and share resources. They organized workshops to teach skills and customs from each culture, helping both species understand and respect one another. A growing sense of unity began to spread beyond the city. Other towns started to adopt similar practices, guided by the example Ronan and Arya set. Stories of successful cooperation traveled far and wide, inspiring more humans and Zarathians to trust one another. Despite the successes, threats remained. Rogue factions still challenged the peace, and natural disasters could strike without warning. But Ronan and Arya faced each challenge with courage and strategy. Together they had become a symbol of resilience, hope, and cooperation. One afternoon, as they inspected a new energy station powered by combined human and Zarathian technology, Arya spoke softly. The work we do here is only the beginning. Humanity has the courage to survive, and with wisdom and cooperation it can thrive. This is history in the making. Ronan looked at the energy station humming with power. I never imagined I would see this. A future we create, not just inherit. And it feels right. Arya's silver eyes met his. It is not just right. It is necessary. The lessons of war must guide us, but they cannot bind us. We choose the future with every decision we make. As night fell, they returned to the city's center, where lanterns lit streets and bridges. People gathered to share stories, meals, and laughter. Humans and Zarathians mingled freely. The glow of the fires reflected in Ronan's eyes. He had seen darkness and despair, but now he saw a vision of what could be. a world where courage, intelligence, and cooperation triumphed over fear and destruction. Ronan felt a sense of deep purpose. The battles he had fought in war had been about survival, but the battles he now fought with Arya were about creation, understanding, and hope. The stakes were higher in a different way, but he welcomed them. The war had ended, but the real mission, the mission to rebuild and unite, was only beginning. In that quiet night, as stars sparkled above the city, Ronan and Arya made a silent promise to one another. They would continue to guide humanity and Zarathians together. They would face obstacles, both expected and unforeseen, and they would not falter. For the first time in many years, Ronan believed in a future beyond war, a future where humans and aliens could stand together, united by courage, trust, and purpose, a future where history could be rewritten not by conflict but by cooperation. The world was changing, and Ronan and Arya were at the heart of that change. Together, they were not just survivors of a war, they were architects of a new era. And so, humanity's story continued, strengthened by courage and shaped by hope. The city had become a beacon of peace in the years after the war. What once stood as a broken ruin of the past now shone as a symbol of what humans and Zarathians could achieve together. New towers rose beside ancient stone structures. Streets were filled with the sound of traders, children, and laughter. For the first time in generations, there was no sound of weapons or alarms. Ronan stood on a high platform, watching the people below. He was no longer the tired soldier who had once walked into a ruined city after the war. His uniform now carried a mark of unity, the crest of both the Human Council and the Zarathian Alliance. But even with this honor, he remained humble. He had learned that true strength was not in commanding soldiers, but in guiding hearts. Arya walked up beside him, dressed in silver robes that shimmered under the morning sun. She carried herself with quiet grace, yet her eyes were as sharp and bright as ever. Her presence still drew attention wherever she went. To humans, she was a symbol of hope. To her own people, she was a bridge between worlds. "The city thrives," Arya said softly as she looked at the streets below. "When I first came here, I saw only sorrow. Now I see growth, unity, and life. This is the real victory." Ronan nodded. "You made this possible. Without you, people might still be rebuilding in silence and fear." Arya turned to him with a small smile. "No, Ronan, you gave them courage. I only showed them another way to use it." Their eyes met for a moment. Neither needed to say more. Years of struggle and hard work had created a bond deeper than words. They had stood side by side through storms, riots, and fear. Together they had built trust, something even stronger than stone walls. Later that day, the council gathered for an important event. Leaders from across Earth and Zarathian colonies had arrived to sign the official declaration of peace. It would mark the first true alliance between humans and another intelligent species. The hall was filled with banners showing both worlds united under one emblem. Ronan stood by the main door as guests entered. He saw soldiers, scientists, teachers, and diplomats. Each carried memories of loss, but also the determination to build something better. When Arya entered, everyone fell silent. She moved gracefully to the center of the hall, where a long table waited with the agreement laid out. The head of the Human Council spoke first. "Today we sign not just a treaty, but a promise that war will never again guide our future. Let this alliance be our greatest achievement." Then Arya stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried through the entire hall. "The war took much from both our peoples, but it also revealed something powerful: the strength to forgive, the will to rebuild, and the courage to trust. This alliance is more than words on paper. It is a living bond. May we protect it together." When she finished, she placed her hand over the signature plate and activated a Zarathian crystal that glowed softly. Ronan followed her and placed his hand beside hers. The two lights merged into one color, golden white, symbolizing unity. Applause filled the hall. The sound echoed beyond the walls and into the city streets, where crowds had gathered to witness the moment. Bells rang and banners waved in the wind. History had changed before their eyes. Humanity was no longer alone in the stars, and the Zarathians were no longer isolated strangers. They were partners in destiny. After the ceremony, Ronan and Arya stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city square. Thousands of people looked up at them, cheering and waving. Some held flowers. Others waved small flags that bore both symbols. The joy was so pure that Ronan felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Arya. This is it. The future we dreamed about, she nodded. Yes, and it is only the beginning. There are still many worlds waiting to see what humans and Zerathians can do together. For the next few months, both of them worked harder than ever. They helped plan schools that taught both languages, programs that sent human engineers to Zerathian cities, and research stations that shared science between worlds. The connection grew stronger every day. But not everything was easy. There were still small groups who feared change. Some whispered that the alliance was dangerous, that humans might lose their identity. Others feared Zerathian technology could one day dominate. Ronan and Arya faced these doubts head-on. They traveled together, speaking to people across the planet, reminding them that fear had once started wars and courage had ended them. One evening, after a long day of meetings, they stood outside the city watching the stars. The night sky shimmered with distant lights, and among them were ships carrying goods and people between Earth and Zerathian worlds. It was a sight neither had ever thought possible years ago. Arya looked up and said, "My mother used to tell me that stars are not just distant fires. They are possibilities." Now I understand what she meant. Ronan smiled faintly. And to think years ago I believed the stars only brought warships and danger. Now they bring hope, she said. He turned toward her. You were that hope, Arya. You changed more than cities or treaties. You changed what humanity believes about itself. Arya's expression softened. You changed it too, Ronan. You showed humans that peace is not weakness. You taught them that courage can build as well as destroy. That is your gift to history. A quiet moment passed between them as the wind rustled nearby trees. They both knew their work was far from over, but they also knew they had done something few in history ever had. They had turned enemies into allies. Years passed, and the alliance continued to grow. Humans traveled to Zerathian worlds to learn and teach. Zerathians came to Earth to study art, medicine, and philosophy. Together they built starports, research centers, and shared councils that governed both species fairly. Trade flourished, and new inventions improved lives everywhere. Ronan eventually stepped down from his leadership post to focus on teaching young soldiers about peacekeeping and responsibility. He wanted them to understand that being a soldier was not only about war, it was about protecting life. Many who trained under him carried his lessons far into space, becoming guardians of unity. Arya returned to the Zerathian homeworld for a time to help guide her people's future. But she often returned to Earth to work with Ronan. Their friendship became legendary. Songs were written about the human soldier and the alien princess who turned conflict into cooperation. Statues were built in their honor, not to glorify them, but to remind future generations that peace must always be protected. On the 10th anniversary of the Alliance, the city held a grand celebration. The plaza was filled with lights, music, and people from both species. Ronan stood beside Arya once again on the same balcony, where they had once looked upon the crowd. The years had added lines to his face, but his eyes were still bright with the same determination. As the music faded, Arya spoke to the crowd. 10 years ago, we stood here unsure of what the future would bring. We had lost much but gained hope. Today, we stand together stronger than ever. The Alliance is not just a story of victory. It is a story of understanding, respect, and shared dreams. The crowd erupted in applause. Ronan raised his hand in a salute, and the sound grew louder. He looked at Arya and said, "History remembers those who destroy, but it will never forget those who build." Arya smiled, and we built together. As fireworks lit the sky, Ronan watched the faces below, human and Zerathian, young and old, smiling together. He felt peace in his heart. The world had healed. The war that once defined humanity was now only a lesson, not a scar. Later that night, when the celebrations quieted and the streets were empty, Ronan walked through the plaza alone. He stopped near a statue of two figures, one human soldier and one alien princess, standing side by side. Below it was a simple engraving. They did not just survive. They changed history. Ronan stood there for a long moment, remembering everything that had brought them here. Then he turned to the stars. Ships moved silently across the night sky, heading toward distant worlds. He knew that somewhere Arya was watching the same stars, guiding her people as he guided his. The future was wide and bright, filled with new challenges and endless hope. Humanity had found its place not by conquering, but by uniting. And at the heart of it all was the story of one soldier and one princess whose courage had rewritten the fate of two worlds. The war had ended long ago, but the legacy of peace would live forever.